Hey plant lovers, welcome back. For years, there was one thing my rubber plant did every single night that quietly bothered me, and I never said anything about it because I figured it was probably nothing. And I'd bet the exact same thing is happening in your home right now, tonight, while you're not even watching. Here's the scene. You walk past your rubber plant before bed, and those big, glossy leaves are drooping, angled downward, soft-looking, almost tired. You go to sleep a little uneasy about it. The next morning, you walk past again, and there it is, standing tall and firm, like nothing ever happened. Relief washes over you, and you move on with your day. But here's the question almost nobody actually asks. Why did that happen in the first place? Search online, and you'll find an answer within seconds. Leaves drooping at night is just the plant sleeping. The same thing prayer plants do. Completely normal. Nothing to think about. That answer feels good. It's reassuring. It lets you stop wondering. The problem is, that explanation was written about a completely different plant, and borrowing it for your rubber plant might be covering up the one thing your plant is actually trying to tell you. By the end of this video, you'll never look at that evening droop the same way again. Hit subscribe if you want plant care explained through real biology, not recycled tips passed from one article to the next, but the actual reasons behind what your plants do every day. The first revelation is this: your rubber plant has never once been asleep. Not at night, not during a storm, not after you moved it across the room. Not ever. Here's where the confusion comes from. Prayer plants, the Marantas and Calatheas that have shown up on plant shelves from Seattle to Miami over the last few years, have a genuinely remarkable structure built into the base of every leaf, called a pulvinus. Think of it as a tiny, natural hinge, packed with specialized cells that can rapidly shift water in and out of themselves. As light fades in the evening, the cells on one side of that hinge lose pressure, while the cells on the other side gain it, and the leaf physically folds upward, sometimes described as the leaves coming together like hands in prayer, which is exactly where the name comes from. By morning, the process runs in reverse, and the leaves open flat again, tracking the day-night cycle almost like clockwork. This isn't a loose comparison or a figure of speech. It's an actual, repeatable, mechanical movement built into the plant's anatomy over a long evolutionary history in the understory of tropical forests across Brazil and Central America, where these plants grow low to the ground, competing with everything around them for scraps of light. Rubber plants come from a completely different world. Ficus elastica is native to the rainforests of northeastern India, Bangladesh, and parts of Malaysia, where in the wild it grows into a genuine forest tree, sometimes over 100 feet tall, with thick, woody stems and rigid, sturdy leaf stalks built for structural support. There's no pulvinus anywhere on the plant. There's no hinge. The leaf stalk's whole job is to hold a heavy leaf steady, not to fold it on a schedule. So when an article tells you that your rubber plant's nightly droop is just like a prayer plant going to sleep, it's borrowing an explanation from a piece of anatomy your rubber plant simply doesn't have. It's the botanical equivalent of explaining why your car's engine sounds different by talking about how a bicycle's gears work. Both are mechanical. Neither explanation transfers. Here's what most people don't know. That doesn't make the drooping meaningless. It makes it the opposite. A prayer plant folding its leaves is the plant doing something it's built to do, on a schedule, regardless of conditions. A rubber plant's leaves drooping is the plant responding to something. And responses carry information. They're not background noise. The correct approach starts with something almost embarrassingly low-tech. For the next week, take a quick phone photo of your rubber plant in the evening, around the same time each night, and another the next morning. Don't change anything else yet. Just watch. What changes once you start doing this is immediate. Instead of a vague, nagging worry every evening, you start seeing an actual pattern. And once you can see the pattern, you can finally start reading it. That's exactly what the rest of this video is going to help you do. The second revelation is the one that actually answers the question from the very beginning. Drooping isn't an emotion, and it isn't a personality trait of the plant. It's water pressure. That's it. Every leaf cell in your rubber plant works a bit like a tiny water balloon, pressing outward against its own cell wall. Botanists call this turgor pressure, and it's the thing keeping those big, glossy leaves rigid and held out at their normal angle through the day. When the cells are full and pressurized, the leaf stays firm. When that pressure drops, even slightly, the cells go a little soft, and the leaf droops under its own weight, the same way a balloon sags once you let a little air out. So what actually changes between evening and morning inside your home? Most of the time, it's temperature. Plenty of homes cool down by several degrees overnight, sometimes more if the heating or air conditioning cycles off for hours at a time. As the air cools, the rate at which water moves through the plant slows down too. And for a few hours, the balance between water arriving through the roots and water already sitting inside the leaves shifts slightly out of sync. On a plant with leaves as large as a rubber plant's, some varieties grow leaves close to the size of a dinner plate. That small shift becomes genuinely visible. By morning, as temperatures climb back toward daytime levels, the whole system rebalances, and the leaves firm back up again. Here's what most people don't know. A small amount of overnight softening that fully disappears by mid-morning is, on its own, well within normal range. Think about how your own body can feel slightly different first thing in the morning compared to mid-afternoon. A little stiffer, a little slower to get going. Nothing's wrong. It's just a living system responding to the conditions around it, the same way it does every single day. The mistake almost everyone makes is treating every individual droop as an emergency. Checking the plant 5 times in one evening, moving it to a new spot the next day, adjusting the watering schedule, all in response to something that was already on its way to resolving on its own by 10 in the morning. The correct approach is almost suspiciously simple. Don't react to a single night. React to a pattern over several days. If the droop fully reverses by mid-morning, consistently, for at least 3 or 4 days in a row, and the room's overall temperature has stayed roughly stable, you're looking at a plant behaving exactly the way it's supposed to, not a plant in trouble. What changes once you adopt this mindset is significant. The nightly worry disappears. And more importantly, you free up your attention for the situations later in this video where something actually is going on. Because those situations look noticeably different from this one, once you know what to look for. This next one is the reason a lot of rubber plants near windows struggle every fall and winter without their owners ever figuring out why. The glass itself starts working against the plant the moment the sun goes down. During the day, a bright spot near a south or east-facing window is often one of the best locations for a rubber plant in an American home. Strong, indirect light, plenty of ambient warmth. But once that sun disappears, especially in colder regions like the Midwest or New England, that same pane of glass can become one of the coldest surfaces in the entire room. On a cold winter night, the surface temperature of a single-pane window can sit 10 to 15 degrees colder than the air just a few feet away. And a thin layer of that cold air pools right at the glass, sinking down along its surface like an invisible curtain. Leaves that are touching the glass or sitting inside that thin pocket of cold air experience the temperature drop directly and immediately, well before the rest of the room has cooled down at all. And because that part of the plant loses turgor faster than the rest, the resulting droop can look noticeably more dramatic on one side of the plant than the other. That lopsided pattern is often the very first clue that something local is going on, rather than something affecting the whole plant evenly. Here's where people go wrong without ever realizing it. In the name of giving the plant more light, they push the pot right up against the glass, sometimes with the largest leaves actually resting on the window itself. During the day, it looks perfect. At night, it's quietly working against everything else you're doing right. The correct approach comes down to simple geometry. Keep at least 6 to 8 inches of breathing room between the plant and any window glass, especially from late fall through early spring. If your home has older single-pane windows, common in a lot of older housing stock in cities like Boston, Chicago, or Portland, that gap matters even more, because the temperature difference at the glass is so much larger. A basic thermal curtain, or even just closing a blind at night, can also cut down significantly on that cold radiating inward. What changes when you make this adjustment is often visible within a single week. The exaggerated, one-sided evening droop softens, then disappears entirely, even though nothing else about your care routine changed at all. The only thing that changed is the temperature the leaves are actually sitting in once the lights go out. And that turns out to matter more than almost anyone expects. And that's just one environmental factor working against your plant at night. The next one is less about where the plant sits and more about what's happening underneath it, in the soil. And it's the one most likely to be quietly shortening your rubber plant's life. Here's the one that changed everything for me. The watering schedule taped to the side of my plant shelf was the actual problem, not a solution to anything. Ficus elastica comes from tropical forests where rainfall can be intense, sometimes dumping inches of water in a single afternoon. But the soil itself drains fast afterward. These are plants whose roots evolved expecting short, heavy bursts of water, followed by long stretches where the surrounding soil dries out and air moves back into the gaps between soil particles. Roots don't just absorb water, they need to breathe, and they do it through exactly those tiny air pockets. A fixed watering schedule, say every Sunday, no matter what, ignores all of that completely. Some weeks, the soil is still damp from the previous watering, and that Sunday top-up pushes it into soggy territory. In soil that stays wet for too long, those air pockets fill with water, the roots start running short on oxygen, and the fine root hairs responsible for most of the plant's actual water uptake begin to struggle and eventually die back. Here's the part that loops directly back to everything we've covered so far. A root system that's quietly struggling doesn't only cause problems during the day. It often shows up first as a more pronounced overnight droop, because the plant's margin for absorbing that small, normal evening shift in water balance has gotten thinner than it used to be. The same droop that was perfectly normal a month ago can start looking different, deeper, slower to recover, once the roots underneath have started to falter. The fix isn't a stricter schedule. It's no calendar-based schedule at all. Before watering, push a finger about 2 inches into the soil. If it still feels cool and damp at that depth, wait another day or two and check again. If it's dry, water thoroughly until liquid runs freely out the drainage holes, then empty any saucer underneath within about 30 minutes so the roots aren't left sitting in a puddle overnight. A basic pot with drainage holes, the kind you can grab for a few dollars at Home Depot or Lowe's, combined with a cheap moisture meter, usually somewhere around $8 to $10, takes almost all the guesswork out of this. What changes is something a lot of rubber plant owners describe as the plant finally settling down. The exaggerated evening droop fades. New leaves come in firmer and glossier than the ones before them. And the whole plant starts to feel less reactive overall, because its roots are finally getting the rhythm of wet, then dry, then wet again, that they were built for in the first place. There's one more situation, though, where even a perfect watering routine won't immediately fix things. Because the issue isn't ongoing, it's recent. The fifth revelation is about something almost nobody thinks to check, because on the surface, it doesn't seem like it should still matter. When did this plant last get moved? Whether it just came home from a garden center, got shifted into a bigger pot, or simply moved from one side of the living room to the other, every one of those events disturbs the plant's fine root hairs, the delicate, almost invisible structures that do the bulk of the actual water absorption. Thick, woody roots survive a move just fine. Root hairs are far more fragile, and they take real time to regrow, roughly 2 to 4 weeks for a minor disturbance, like shifting the pot a few feet, and up to 6 to 8 weeks after a full repot, or after a long trip from a growing operation in a state like Florida to a home somewhere much farther north. During that recovery window, the plant's water uptake capacity is temporarily reduced. Not gone, just diminished. And that's exactly the kind of small deficit that becomes most noticeable during the daily temperature shift at night that we already talked about. So a plant that looked perfectly healthy 2 weeks ago can suddenly start drooping more dramatically in the evenings, simply because it was recently moved or repotted, and its root system is mid-repair. The mistake here is treating that temporary dip as a long-term problem. People respond by repotting again, switching up the watering routine, or moving the plant to yet another spot, all of which adds a fresh layer of stress directly on top of stress that was already in the process of healing. The correct approach is to do almost nothing for 4 to 6 weeks after any move or repot. Same spot, same light, same watering rhythm as before the change, adjusted only slightly if the new pot is noticeably bigger. Let the root hairs rebuild on their own timeline without interference. What changes, if you give it that window, is that the drooping gradually fades on its own. New leaf growth starts to appear at the top of the plant, and within a couple of months, the plant looks like it never went through any transition at all, because, biologically, the root system has fully caught back up. So far, every revelation has pointed towards something temporary, something environmental, something that resolves once you understand it. But there's one more possibility, and it's the one this entire video has been quietly building toward, because it's the one that actually matters most if it's true. This is the one I almost left out, because it's the one nobody wants to hear. Sometimes, that evening droop really is a warning sign. The only way to know for certain is a simple test you can start tonight, for free. Here's how it usually unfolds. In the early stages of root rot, caused by fungi that thrive in soil that stayed wet for too long, the exact conditions from a couple of revelations ago, only a portion of the root system is affected at first. During the day, the remaining healthy roots can mostly keep pace with the plant's needs, so everything looks normal in daylight. But at night, when that small, ordinary shift in water balance happens, the already reduced root system doesn't have the same buffer it used to have. So the droop shows up a little earlier in the evening, lasts a little longer, and doesn't quite bounce all the way back by morning, even though, at a glance, everything still looks roughly fine. As more roots become affected over the following days and weeks, that gap keeps widening. The incomplete morning recovery becomes a permanent, partial droop that's there even at noon. Eventually, it shows up consistently throughout the day, and by that point, a significant portion of the root system may already be gone. This is exactly why the 3-day test matters, and why it's worth doing even if you're fairly confident nothing's wrong. For 3 nights in a row, take note of how dramatic the evening droop is. Each following morning, note how completely it recovers, fully firm again, mostly firm with a little softness left, or still visibly drooping. If recovery is complete each morning, and the pattern stays roughly the same from night to night, you're almost certainly looking at the normal, temperature-driven shift covered earlier in this video. But if each morning's recovery is a little less complete than the morning before, if the plant is, in a sense, falling slightly further behind every single day, that's the signal to stop simply watching and start checking. Checking means 3 things, and none of them require any special tools. First, smell the soil. A sour, swampy smell is a strong red flag. Second, gently slide the root ball partway out of its pot and look at the roots near the bottom. Healthy rubber plant roots are firm and pale, somewhere between tan and white. Roots affected by rot are dark, often brown to black, soft, and sometimes can be pulled apart with almost no resistance at all, like wet paper. Third, pay attention to how long the soil stays wet after watering. If it's still damp a full week later, drainage has become a real, ongoing problem, not a one-time mistake. If you do find rot, the correct approach is to act without delay. Trim away the dark, soft roots using a clean pair of scissors or pruning shears. A quick wipe with rubbing alcohol between cuts is enough, until what remains is firm and pale all the way through. Repot into fresh, well-draining potting mix, ideally one with extra perlite mixed in, available at the garden section of any Home Depot or Lowe's. And choose a new pot that's only slightly larger than the root system that's left. What changes from here depends almost entirely on timing. Catch it within that first 3-day window, and most rubber plants bounce back within 2 to 3 weeks, pushing out new growth that looks nothing like the tired plant from before. Wait a full month, and there's a real chance the plant can't be brought back at all. Which is exactly why, of everything covered in this video, this is the revelation that matters most. So here's the one sentence that ties every part of this together. Your rubber plant's evening droop is a small, honest readout of everything happening below the soil. And whether that readout means nothing or means everything depends entirely on the pattern over several days, not on any single night. Since putting all of this together, my rubber plant has never looked better. Fuller leaves, faster new growth at the top, and none of that creeping worry every time the sun starts going down. There's something almost reassuring about that, once you see it clearly. A plant that droops a little every evening and stands back up every morning isn't hiding anything from you. It's showing you exactly how it's doing, every single day, in a language that just takes a little learning to read. Tell me in the comments, what's been your biggest struggle with your rubber plant? I want to hear about it, especially if it's something this video didn't quite cover. Take care of your plants.